So just 3 days ago, I decided I was going to start leveling a second character. I had started on the Witch and went into like a full Chaos Blood Mage build, and it's quite fun. I really do enjoy it, but I've always had a thing for poison builds in games, so I decided I wanted to go ahead and start a Ranger, and I seriously couldn't put it down. In just 3 days, I got her up to level 68 as of the time I'm recording this, and as soon as I'm done, I'm going to go right back to leveling her up. One thing that really stood out to me was just how much easier it was to power through everything and get to the end game. And it's not just because I had hand-me-downs in the form of like skill gems and stuff from my main account. It was the fact that burst damage was more accessible earlier. The extreme mobility of the class also made it so that boss fights were incredibly less challenging, as I could, move out of the tells of attacks very quickly, where the Witch is kind of slow and lumbering and has a hard time avoiding those wide AoE attacks. And having a high evasion rating, it meant that sometimes attacks that clearly should have hit me just simply don't, and I get away for free. I fought the final boss on Cruel to get to the end game on my Ranger, and I was underleveled, and I finished the fight without using a single flask for health or mana. I just never needed them. I was never in any real danger since I wasn't really getting hit. So in this video, I'm going to break down some quick observations about the Pathfinder and let you know what worked for me. I'll do a brief look at my build too, but it's not finished yet, so in a future video, I'll have like a Mobalytics breakdown of the fully matured build. Okay, so even right now, I launched into the Atlas grind, and I was running maps with 0 issues that were 4 levels higher than my Ranger, because those were just the waystones that I had from my main character. So let's get cranking here. First up, I want to talk about poison stacking. This is really what my whole approach has been about. I want as many poison stacks as possible, lasting as long as possible, and doing as much damage as possible on every enemy at the same time. So that means my entire skill tree is about investing in those things. So I've invested heavily in poison duration nodes, mainly because some of those nodes that were taking like overwhelming toxicity in the Ascendancy tree, they actually dramatically reduce the duration of our poison effect in exchange for making the poisons more lethal or allowing us to increase the maximum numbers of stacks of poison that we can apply. So right now I'm up to 6 stacks of poison possible, and if I choose to take one more node, I can make it 8 if I want. But here's what 6 stacks of poison looks like on a yellow health bar enemy right now.
Quick and lethal. Quick and lethal.
Okay, now in order to get that many stacks before they start to expire, we have to throw a gas cloud out and a vine arrow down. After that, it's a lot of like poison burst arrows in a row. And due to the spirit gem ability Herald of the Plague, that poison is going to start creeping through the entire mob of enemies, and it spreads the most damaging poison effect on the enemy too. So we couple that with the ability Plague Bearer, which charges lightning fast with this build, by the way, but it stores up poison damage in our bodies and then allows us to like detonate it in a Nova Burst for a super highly concentrated poison effect. Now I'm actually using support gems that make it so that I can cast it on a target instead of detonating it on myself. So I don't have to walk into the middle of the mob anymore to detonate it. I can just throw it at something and have this giant explosion. And I'm also using support gems that increase the radius of that Nova Burst by 50%, so it's much wider. It hits more enemies inside of it. And that highly concentrated poison in that Nova Burst effect then starts to spread rapidly throughout the entire pack for nearly instantaneous deletion of mobs. But it also allows us to do big burst damage on bosses too. So the Forge Master boss in the Molten Vault, for example, where you have to kill him fast, or before the lava runs all the way down to the end of the arena. Well, that guy got cooked by the halfway point. I wasn't fully built for that fight either. I was just sort of just running with what I had at the time. But another thing that's super important is attack speed coupled with poison chance on hit. So what I'm doing is I'm running a Toxic Quiver with a dual string bow, so I can shoot 2 arrows at once, which is great for spreading poison burst arrows through a mob of enemies, but it's also good for applying extra poison stacks. The Toxic Quiver gives me poison chance on hit, and I have a ton of poison chance on hit nodes selected in my passive tree as well. So I'm stacking all of those things. And that means that basically every arrow I shoot is going to poison an enemy, and it's totally for free. So I can spam just regular bow shots for free and keep refreshing those stacks of poison. A couple of other things to note here. In the passive tree, I'm using the wasting perk, which makes me do 30% more damage with hits against poisoned enemies. So my bow just gets a free 30% damage buff here on everything I'm shooting. But it's also important to shoot really fast so we can keep those poison stacks on the enemy. So I've invested in a lot of attack speed options too, including Falcon Technique, which gives me 1% attack speed for every 15 points I have in dexterity. For now, that means that I'm getting an extra 11% attack speed, but once I get this build fully grooving, we'll be looking at more like 20%. My immediate goals for this build are definitely to focus on making gains in my resistances and survivability. I evade a lot of damage for free with my movement speed buffs and evasion rating, but with a lot of big fire and electricity attacks out there in the endgame, they do serious damage to me right now because my resistances aren't super high. So I'm going to keep grinding out exalts on these maps so that I can find good offerings on the market to fill in the gaps in my build. So we're up to a new baseline as we launch headfirst into the endgame grind on the Ranger. So soon, I'm sure it will pass my witch. But polite reminder, by the way, if you're ever in need of a specific piece of gear to get through a hard check that has you stuck, make sure you look at the marketplace before you go blowing regals and exalted orbs on gear just to potentially get nothing good out of it. Trading is fast and easy, and it requires no communication. Earlier today, I was working on a boss, and I thought to myself, man, an upgrade to my helmet would be really great, especially if it had evasion and max life on it. I checked the marketplace, I found one, I hit the whisper button, immediately I got an invite, I joined, threw an exalted at the guy and got a new helmet and immediately loaded back into my fight and cooked the dude on the first try, right? It all took like 4 minutes to find the item, then be back in my fight with the item equipped. So make sure that you're taking full advantage of that feature of this game. Alright, that's about everything I wanted to say about the Pathfinder for now. I'm super excited to continue leveling it up. And if you're a Pathfinder by chance running a poison build and you've got some tips for me or advice about key parts of the build that I should be on the lookout for, please let me know in the comments section, especially if there's any unique items I'm not aware of that I should keep my eyes peeled for. Thanks for watching today. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I do hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.